Have you ever felt like you see the world through a completely different lens? Like you're living in a world that doesn't really see you back? Carl Jung once said that most people live their lives as fragments, never meeting the deeper layers of who they truly are. But there are a few, very few, who break that pattern. These are the people Jung described as possessing an individuated personality, a mind so integrated, so self-aware, that it stands almost alone in a world of imitation. Today, we're exploring 5 signs you might have one of the rarest personality types Carl Jung ever described. And if these resonate with you, it's not because you're strange. It's because you're awakening to a depth most people never reach. The Jungian view of rarity. Jung never measured rare personalities the way modern typology does. He wasn't talking about being an INFJ or an INTJ, or scoring uniquely on a test. He spoke about consciousness, the painful, lifelong process of integrating the shadow, understanding your inner archetypes, and living not from your mask, but from your essence. According to Jung, truly individuated people, those who have met their inner world fully, are almost never understood by society. They're often misunderstood, isolated, or seen as too deep or too intense. Yet, he believed they are the torchbearers of human evolution, the ones who keep the light of the psyche alive in an age of conformity. So, how do you know if you're one of them? Let's start with the first sign. Sign 1. You are deeply aware of the inner conflict within you. Jung believed that most people never truly see the split inside themselves. They project it outward, blaming others for what they haven't faced within. But the rarest personalities, they see it clearly. You may feel like 2 people live inside you. One is drawn to light, to peace, growth, kindness. The other hides in the dark corners, angry, insecure, yearning for control. And instead of pretending one doesn't exist, you feel both. You wrestle with both. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, the moment your unconscious material stops being invisible and starts becoming a conversation partner. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. You notice your envy when someone succeeds. You recognize the hunger for validation hiding behind your humility. And even when it hurts, you'd rather see the truth than live in denial. Jung wrote that this confrontation is not a one-time revelation, but a lifelong dialogue. It's the work of seeing over and over again the masks you wear and choosing not to become them. This level of self-awareness isolates you at first. You can't unsee what you've seen. You start noticing how much of modern life is built on projection, on pretending, on running from the shadow. But Jung would say, that's exactly how you know you've begun to individuate. Because when you stop fighting your inner contradictions, and instead begin to listen to them, you become whole. And wholeness, in Jung's view, is what makes a person truly rare. In Jung's words, there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Those who accept this truth begin a journey that few dare to take. And it leads to the second sign, something that might explain why the world often misunderstands you entirely. Sign 2. You feel deeply misunderstood, yet you value solitude over belonging. If you've ever felt like you were born into the wrong time, the wrong crowd, or even the wrong world, you're not alone. Carl Jung wrote that those who awaken to their true individuality often find themselves alienated from the collective. It's not because they reject society, but because they can't unsee its illusions. You may sense this alienation in quiet moments. You walk into a room full of people, and you can almost feel the invisible patterns, the unspoken roles, the groupthink, the masks everyone wears. And somewhere deep down, a part of you knows, I can't go back to that. This is what Jung called the loneliness of individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are requires stepping away from what everyone else needs you to be. It means letting go of the security of belonging so you can stand in the uncertainty of authenticity. Most people spend their lives clinging to the collective psyche, the crowd's beliefs, the family's values, the tribe's comfort. But you start to feel that those borrowed truths don't fit anymore. They feel hollow. So, you begin the descent. You start exploring your own inner voice, the one that doesn't speak in slogans or borrowed phrases. And as that voice grows louder, you find yourself spending more time alone. Not because you dislike people, but because solitude becomes your teacher. Jung once wrote, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." That line captures the pain and the power of rare personalities. You may crave connection, but you can't betray your own soul to get it. In solitude, you start to realize something profound. You don't need external validation to exist meaningfully. You stop measuring your worth by how many people get you, and begin valuing how truthfully you can live with yourself. This is when you begin to embody what Jung called the self, the organizing principle of the psyche that transcends the ego. The more you listen to this deeper self, the more you realize that loneliness was never the punishment. It was the initiation. You learn to sit in the silence that once terrified you. You begin to see that your solitude isn't emptiness. It's a sacred space where your unconscious can finally speak. And ironically, that's when your connection to life deepens. You start seeing beauty in small things, meaning in stillness, and grace in imperfection. The world no longer feels like something you have to escape. It becomes a mirror for your inner landscape. So if you've ever been told you're too intense, too withdrawn, or too different, Jung would tell you this. It's not that you're disconnected from the world, it's that you're connected to something beyond it. You're tuned to a frequency that most people never hear. And that's not a curse. It's the mark of someone who's waking up. But there's another side to this awakening, one that few people expect. Because when you start hearing the deeper voice within, you also begin sensing something else. The symbolic, hidden patterns running through everything around you. And that takes us to the third sign, the one Jung believed separated ordinary awareness from true psychological depth. Sign 3. You perceive symbolism and meaning hidden in everyday life. There comes a point in self-awareness when reality begins to speak back. It's not that the world changes, it's that you start to see it differently. The coincidences, the patterns, the dreams that echo your waking life. None of them feel random anymore. Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences that reveal the invisible threads connecting psyche and world. To most people, a dream is just a dream. To you, it's a message. Something from the deeper layers of the unconscious trying to be heard. You don't just live on the surface of life. You live in its symbols. Jung wrote that the psyche speaks in images. When logic fails, the unconscious paints its truths through metaphor, intuition, and archetype. If you're one of the rare few tuned to this language, you might feel like your life unfolds as a story written by something far wiser than your ego. You notice when certain themes repeat: betrayal, rebirth, isolation, transformation, and realize they're not coincidences. They're archetypal patterns, the same ones that have guided myth and religion for thousands of years. It's as if your personal story is secretly participating in a universal one. This perception can feel like a blessing and a burden. You might struggle to explain it to others, because modern culture prizes logic over meaning. But Jung believed that seeing symbolically is not delusion, it's psychological maturity. It's what happens when the conscious mind becomes aware of its connection to the collective unconscious, the vast reservoir of human symbols and experiences that live within us all. When you live this way, even pain takes on meaning. Your heartbreak isn't just loss, it's an initiation. Your failures aren't punishments, they're symbols of transformation. You begin to sense that life isn't happening to you, but through you. This symbolic awareness changes how you move through the world. You start paying attention to dreams, to strange coincidences, to the timing of things. You realize that your psyche and your reality are in a kind of dialogue, one that's been ongoing since the beginning of consciousness itself. Jung warned, though, that this sensitivity must be balanced with grounding. Because when everything becomes symbolic, there's a danger of drifting too far from the tangible world. The goal isn't to float in symbolism, but to integrate it, to bring the insights of the unconscious back into your daily life, like a diver bringing pearls from the deep. To live symbolically, yet stay rooted in the real, that's the rarest art of all. And those who can do it, Jung said, are the true bridges between worlds. So if you find yourself drawn to patterns that others dismiss, if you've ever felt that life itself is trying to tell you something, you may already be living the third sign of a truly rare personality. But seeing the hidden meaning in things also opens another door, one that leads straight into the unknown. Because once you learn to read life symbols, you begin to sense the immense power that lives within you. And that brings us to the fourth sign, the transformation Jung said could make or break the human soul. Sign 4. You transform pain into growth and chaos into meaning. Jung believed that the rarest souls aren't the ones who avoid suffering, they're the ones who learn to transmute it. He compared this process to alchemy, the ancient art of turning base metals into gold. But the gold Jung spoke of wasn't physical. It was psychological. It was the gold of consciousness, of becoming more whole through the very experiences that once shattered you. If you have this kind of personality, your darkest moments don't destroy you. They forge you. Every heartbreak, every loss, every failure becomes raw material for transformation. You don't run from your pain. You descend into it. You mine it for truth. Jung called this descent the nigredo, the blackening, where the old self dissolves in the darkness of the unconscious. To the world, it might look like depression, confusion, or even madness. But to the psyche, it's sacred work. It's the breakdown that precedes the breakthrough. Most people spend their lives trying to keep the surface intact, avoiding anything that might shake their identity. But you've learned that the cracks are where the light gets in. You understand that destruction is often the first step toward rebirth. This is why rare personalities often go through multiple deaths and rebirths throughout life. They reinvent themselves, not because they're restless, but because life keeps calling them to deeper layers of authenticity. When something painful happens, you don't just ask, "Why me?" You ask, "What is this trying to show me?" That question alone separates ordinary awareness from evolved consciousness. Jung believed that this alchemical process is how the unconscious becomes conscious. When you face your wounds instead of escaping them, you release their energy. You integrate their lessons. And that integration changes you. You become less reactive, more intuitive. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and begin to see yourself as a co-creator of meaning. In the language of alchemy, the lead of suffering becomes the gold of understanding. And it's in this crucible that individuality is refined. Every shadow faced, every fear transcended, every illusion burned away, it all becomes part of your inner gold. But this transformation comes with a cost. The deeper you go, the more you realize how few people truly want to see beyond their surface. You may find that you can no longer have shallow conversations, or pretend to care about things that once mattered. This can be isolating, but it's also liberating. Because at some point, you stop fearing your darkness altogether. You start to see that your light and your shadow are not enemies. They are two halves of the same divine process. And once you embrace that truth, something incredible happens. Your pain starts working for you instead of against you. You become the alchemist of your own psyche, the one who can walk through fire and come out illuminated. That is the mark of someone who has turned consciousness itself into art. But there's one more sign, the rarest of them all. Because after you faced your shadow, embraced solitude, read the language of symbols, and transformed pain into wisdom, there's still one final threshold. The moment when you no longer live for the self, but through it. The moment Jung called the emergence of the self in its wholeness. And that's the fifth and final sign. Sign 5. You live in harmony with both the light and the shadow. Jung believed that the end goal of psychological development wasn't perfection, it was wholeness. And the person who achieves that state, even briefly, carries a kind of inner peace that feels almost otherworldly. It's not the peace of having no conflict. It's the peace of having made peace with conflict. If you have this kind of personality, you no longer see yourself as divided between good and bad, light and dark. You've stopped fighting who you are. Instead, you've accepted that everything you've been, all your contradictions, all your desires, all your failures, belong to one life, one psyche. Jung called this integration individuation, the process of becoming your true self. Not the self the world told you to be, not the mask you built to survive, but the self that has been quietly guiding you all along. At this point, your values begin to change. You stop chasing success, admiration, or validation. You start caring about meaning, connection, and inner truth. You realize that authenticity is not about being perfect, it's about being complete. This kind of authenticity radiates. People might not understand you, but they feel your presence. You don't have to convince anyone of who you are. The energy of your wholeness speaks louder than any words. You become what Jung described as a center and circumference at once. You're grounded in yourself, yet connected to everything. You can move through chaos without losing your center, and through stillness without losing your fire. The individuated person no longer lives life reactively, they live symbolically. Every action, every choice, becomes part of a larger inner narrative. You start living as if your life itself is an archetype unfolding, a bridge between the human and the divine. But perhaps the most extraordinary thing is this: you no longer need to be understood. You've realized that truth doesn't depend on agreement. That peace doesn't depend on control. And that love, real love, begins only when you stop trying to fix yourself and simply allow yourself to be. In Jung's view, people who reach this state often become silent teachers. They don't preach, they embody. Their calm is contagious. Their depth brings others closer to their own souls. They carry both light and shadow openly, and in doing so, they remind others that healing doesn't mean erasing the dark, it means illuminating it. This is the rarest kind of personality Jung ever described. A person who is both human and mythic, both grounded and transcendent. Someone who doesn't escape the world, but transforms it from the inside out. If you recognized yourself in these 5 signs, it's not because you've arrived. It's because you've begun. The path Jung described was never about achieving enlightenment. It was about becoming conscious. And that work never ends. You'll keep meeting new shadows. You'll keep finding new depths of meaning, new ways to love, new ways to see. And with each turn of the spiral, you'll become a little more real, a little more whole, and a little more alive. Because to have a rare personality, in Jung's sense, isn't to be special. It's to be authentic. To live with your eyes open, to yourself, to your darkness, to the mystery of being human. And that, as Jung wrote, is the privilege of a lifetime. Thank you for watching. See you in the next dimension.